Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service and jbiztechvalley.com. We have a very, very special guest with us, Michael Rosen from the food industry, Alliance. Mike, welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you for
having me.
having
Did you
me.
bring any bagels and lox? That's what I was expecting we'd have.
Well, we do have a cake because this is our 100th show in 11 months. We did 100 shows of the Jewish View right here at Channel Albany, and I really think that it's credit to the folks who put this operation together, to Joe Alandato, who makes this all happen. He's the coordinator, and I just want to, I think it's a real milestone that in just 11 months, we did 100 shows.
Better than Hollywood over here.
That's right.
Our next stop over here.
And of course, we have a cake to honor this, and that's all part of food, and the Food Industry Alliance is here, although the cake is kosher and didn't come from the Food Industry Alliance, it's Stern's Cake, but
Well, you had to buy it in a store. And
that's right.
Represent food stores.
That's right. So,
well, what is the Food Industry Alliance? Let's start off with the basics.
We are a statewide trade association representing all sizes of food stores. We have about 850 members who operate about 10,000 stores in New York.
This is only New York State then?
We are just a statewide association. We have wholesalers who join on behalf of their independent retailers, and we have chains. But we're a statewide group with about half of the state's food stores.
and you're the president and CEO of that. You just became the head of the Alliance maybe a year ago or so?
Since February of this year.
All right, give you a mazel tov.
Well, thank you.
Right.
And
You
congratulations
have a lot of
on
success.
your milestone.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, so what is your particular job? So to bring them together for pricing, for quality of food?
To lobby the legislature.
Our primary focus is government relations. So we have, we're based in Albany. We also have a downstate lobbyist who handles Long Island, New York City, and the downstate counties. And we do a lot of trade events to bring the suppliers together with the retailers.
So how come you're not at Kosher Fest?
I should go.
You should be.
Absolutely.
We'll go in November.
I'll bet the members that will be there.
Okay.
It's an important category.
Food part, sure. Well, tell us a few of the issues that you would like to see, what you're lobbying for.
Besides GMO, go into other issues. We'll get into GMO in a minute.
Well, we follow anything that affects retail sales, so anything dealing with alcohol licensing, tobacco sales, minimum wage, and any of those kinds of issues we'll get involved in.
There was a big issue with the alcohol, wasn't there? Or wine?
Wine in food stores, which we...
yeah, that was it. Wine in the grocery
which
stores.
we sought for a few years. We put it on the back burner at the moment, but that's something I'm sure we'll address in the future.
I think we'll see wine in grocery stores. I was in Maine. I saw Maine has wine in grocery stores.
Most states do. New York does not.
Yeah, what's the reason?
The liquor distributors and retailers like things the way they are. So
You think they'll put mom and pop liquor stores out of business?
it has not happened in other states, but that's the fear and the contention.
That's the fear. Okay. So let me ask you this. The reason I wanted you to be on the show is because or Rabbi Simon and I wanted you on the show is because of this GMO labeling.
Mm-hmm.
Explain what GMO is first.
Well, I don't know if I'm qualified.
Well, it's genetic modified organisms.
Right. GMO is a technology, a biotechnology by which plants are altered to increase yield and to allow farmers to grow crops in more adverse conditions.
So like companies like, from what I've read, and I have about, 30 pages.
You read all that, Mark? You did your homework?
I did my homework, and
All right.
I'm more confused now than I was before.
Yeah, well, join the club.
It seems as though Monsanto and DuPont are being demonized by the folks on the other side of the argument for them. So I don't know. There must be other folks who are involved, but they apparently spray their corn and tomatoes and other things with some chemicals.
As I understand the
it's chemical
technology,
resistant.
well,
or
as I
something
understand
just-
the technology, seeds are altered to have certain favorable qualities. And Monsanto and DuPont are two of the leading producers of those kinds of
And
seeds.
when you say favorably altered, what's
well,
the
there are
euphemism?
characteristics that farmers look for. They want seeds that will have a higher yield, that can be grown using fewer fertilizers and chemicals, and use less water. So if you can buy seeds that give you more crops, that you have to use fewer chemicals in growing, that you can grow in a shorter season like in New York, then that's a benefit for farmers.
And they say that it's resistant to another Monsanto product that was Roundup.
Roundup. So they can.
So Monsanto is doing something that's resistant to one of their own products, which I didn't understand.
Yeah, well, that I do understand. So Monsanto has a product that kills weeds, and so if you can grow a plant that is not affected by Roundup, you can plant, let's say, your corn, and then if weeds grow up, spray around the corn with Roundup to kill the weeds, but it won't kill the corn.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows farmers to operate more efficiently. But I should be clear, we
Yes,
don't represent
right.
either the seed manufacturers or the farmers or even
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
What is your position then?
well,
Are you for or against? Or?
well, our position is sort of in between, in that we are not supporting or opposing GMO labeling. What we're opposing is state-specific labeling. If Congress or FDA were to say we think GMO ingredients should be labeled, we would be fine with that. What we have a problem with is if New York, by itself or in connection with one or two other states, says we want GMO labeling that's different than the rest of the country. Our goal is to provide the widest number of food products at the lowest possible price for consumers. And we have a concern that if there's a barrier, because New York requires specific labeling
Then
of
people in
products.
Pennsylvania will say, I don't want that,
Well,
so I'm not going to buy these
You may
New
have
York
to have,
products.
or you may have to create a special package for a special state, and then the packaging and
That's it,
manufacturing gets
yeah.
more expensive.
yeah, let me give you some examples as
Okay,
to
go
why
ahead.
we have a concern. Every food store in New York is serviced from a multi-state warehouse. Locally, Price Chopper has one in Rotterdam, and Hannaford has theirs in Schodack, and West Wegmans has one in Monroe County, and downstate, Crasdale even has one in Hunts Point. And if you go to one of these warehouses, you'll see that they're filled to capacity today. They typically have what we would call 80,000 slots or 80,000 different stock keeping items. And that's because a typical food store has about 50,000 items, plus there are seasonal items that come and go. So you've got your core products and then the items that are rotated. And there is just not enough room in any warehouse in the state to double slot items. So if you had to have slots today for Wheaties, or you think about all the different products we have, and then you had to double slot some or most of those to have
GMO-free or GMO.
or
So you're
the New York
doubling
label
everything.
GMO, we would have to choose first which products could we cover. Secondly, if manufacturers had to start doing separate production runs for New York, that's going to cost them more. It's a pass-through business. They would charge us more. We make a penny on a dollar. We would pass those costs on to consumers. So first of all, we have a concern about how would you operate a multi-state warehouse. The second concern we have is a lot of the way that we bring sale items into New York is a manufacturer or a food broker will call us and say, I have an overstock of a product in, let's say, Florida. So let's say somebody calls Price Chopper and says, I have an overstock of cranberry, ocean spray cranberry juice. And if I have 20 pallets. And if you buy all 20 pallets, I'll sell them to you for $1 off. Well, Price Chopper will go, I can use that. They buy all 20 pallets, it gets shipped to New York, it gets sent to their warehouse. They don't even unpack it really. They just offload it, they put it right on trucks. It goes out to their 60 stores in New York. They build an end cap in the store and they put it on sale the next week. If we can't buy those products because it doesn't have the specific labeling that New York requires, all of those sale opportunities go away.
And also, if it was non-GMO, let's say cranberries, I think of Maine. We come and and you put, maybe you have to put a label on that says no GMO. If that was the law in New York State, it takes more time, it takes manpower, it takes more effort, and
Sure.
so that
You're right,
it
Mark.
takes away from the sale, from the dollar
Right.
off.
And you think about how we have sale items. We barely unpack the cases. You just sort of take them out and you stack them up and they fly out of the store. If you have to now handle each product and get the right label, which you'd have to get from the manufacturer, and retailers are loath to relabel product because they don't know what's in it. We like to rely on the manufacturer. So we're not in the business of making representations where we don't know about the veracity.
No, of course. Now, I wanted to, I'm sorry, Rabbi.
Well, I just want to know that, what about becoming law? Is it a front of the assembly? Who would be the people who would make this law? A New York State commission?
Well, there's
Or is it going to happen, or you're scared of happening, or it's kind of, you're just being sure it's going to be dead in the water?
Well, we were
I mean, where's it
successful
holding?
this year in working with a coalition at stopping it. There was a bill that was pending in both the Senate and the Assembly, and it passed out of a few committees in the Assembly, but at the end of the session, it did not pass either house. And since the whole legislature is up for election this year, new bills will have to be introduced next year. They won't be carried forward.
Assemblywoman Linda Rosenthal from Manhattan was sponsoring in the Assembly, and then Senator Ken LaValle from Long Island was the other sponsor in the Senate. And it got through the Consumer Protection Committee.
And the Codes Committee.
And the
in
Codes
Assembly.
Committee. And what's interesting is that there was an assemblyman who sponsored it but voted against it in committee. And who was that assembly? I forgot. Was it Mickey Kearns or was it?
I don't recall.
But there was an assemblyman who was the prime sponsor, and then he voted against it. He
Or
voted.
maybe you had a convincing argument.
I'm
Did you
going
go
to
in front
take
of
credit
the-
for that. I don't recall who it was, but Mark is correct.
You did go in front of the committee and explain
We-
your position like you're explaining to us?
We spoke to every member of that committee, actually repeatedly. And there's actually even a bigger impact on fresh produce, which is really interesting in a way. What the bill says is, when we sell fresh produce, if it is grown with a GMO seed, we would have to put a label on, genetically engineered or grown with GMO seeds or whatever. So if we bought corn from a local farmer, we'd have to put a sign up, which we think, frankly, would scare consumers. But
It was Dennis Gaberzak.
Gaberzak, oh right, who's no longer with us.
Former
Right, former
assemblyman.
assemblyman. That's probably
And
why I
he's no
forgot.
longer there, but yeah, he received checks from 6 different opponents of the bill in 2013, a total that placed him in a tie for the most number of contributions received by an individual member of his conference, according to this group called New York GE, not General Electric, Genetic Engineering maybe, Food Labeling Campaign. So that was an article in the Metroland that says, follow the money on GMOs. And they were, talking about how, Coke, for example, Coca-Cola spent over $500,000 in lobbying New York State, and the GMO labeling bill was the only state bill they lobbied on besides the state budget.
I can't.
I know you can't, but that's why I'm
right.
not vouching that Metro,
I know we have worked with Coke on other issues, like
Right.
the
so even if
the
they
big
spent
gulp issue in the city.
even if they
or-
spent half of that on the GMO label, that's still $250,000 they spent.
This was a hotly contested and polarizing issue. But let me tell you about produce, because it's sort of
Okay, go ahead.
interesting.
Yeah, the produce is.
One, if you grow something with a GMO seed, you'd have to label it, which, frankly, we understand. However, the bill also says if we are selling a fresh produce that is not grown with a GMO seed, the farmer has to give us a written statement with each shipment saying it's not grown with a GMO seed nor commingled unless it's certified organic. Well, the typical food store today has 50,000 items in their produce department. Because they're perishable, many turn over 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week. So if you think about all of the shipments to a supermarket and all of the paperwork, first from the farmer, then to the distributor, and then all of the paperwork that we would have to keep track of with every shipment of lettuce or zucchini, it would be staggering. And there's no way we could keep track of that without affecting prices.
So how did Vermont pass this type of bill?
Vermont passed it, and about a month later, the grocery manufacturers sued them on free speech and interstate commerce issues.
And it's pending.
So it's pending.
Okay.
So we don't know how Vermont is going to fare. You know, frankly, I'd like to see another state implement it, because first there's going to be expenses in the manufacturers and then the retail community gearing up, and then there'll be enforcement issues.
Do you ever get together with the folks like from GMO-free New York to hear their side and to hear what they have to say about it, or do you read their material?
We are at the same hearings and we read their material, but frankly, they're pretty strident.
Do they have a point?
I think they have a point nationally, not in. I just don't think we have a national system of food labeling. We have nutritional labeling and all of the claims that people made, like whether something is organic or not, are national standards.
What about kosher, Rabbi? Do you know? I mean, that's not a national thing. If you have a label that's kosher, it's specific to an organization, right?
Well, the OU, I mean, if you take Orthodox
not just the OU, the
Union.
Vada Kashrut, then you got the one in Texas, and you got another label for Florida, and you got another label for Baltimore.
Well, there is
and
no
you got a lot of different
unified level of kosher.
Right.
So really, when they say kosher, it's a consumer beware, because only that organization is backing it up. So people know which are, and most times they're reliable. But if there's someone, I'm just bringing out from St. Louis or some city, because there's literally over 1,000 kosher agencies in the United States. So I don't know, is this a rabbi from Oregon? Who am I? I don't even know every rabbi in the United States.
You know, that's actually a good example, because having a kosher certification is value added. A lot of people look for it. It's an important category to us. But it's a voluntary program. So if somebody wants to represent, they have a kosher product, they have to register it with the State Department of Agriculture and Markets. If I wanted to see if that's a reliable certifier, I can go to Ag and Markets website and see who did it. But it's voluntary. So if we chose to buy, you know, a product, matzah even, from Israel, it may or may not be kosher, but that's our decision. We could bring it in. It's not a barrier.
When you say our decision, you mean?
I meant the retailers.
Retailers. And let me just show you this. This is Goldbaum's All Natural Chippers. And I got this from Kosher Fest. I'll hold this up when I went last November to the kosher trade show. And basically it says GMO-free, gluten-free, wheat-free, preservative-free, trans-fat-free, MSG-free, and additive-free. But there's a high cost to all this free. It's free of everything, but there's
double the price.
But double the price. So who knew gluten is glue? To get more information on Noam gluten-free, glue-free seal, and how gluten acts like glue in the gut, visit.
Well, you know what? There are producers. There are actually farmers, producers, who think they can create a niche by selling GMO-free product, and they're making that representation. That's the problem with
you. It's just like kosher. You want to put GMO-free on your thing. Let them. Who's stopping anybody?
We are all for it.
Yeah,
our only issue is don't mandate that the whole 90% of the rest of the food products have to have a New York-only labeling standard.
You're right. It really is like the kosher industry. You want to put kosher on, it's your business. If you don't, no one's New York State saying, well, you got to make it kosher.
And I guarantee supermarkets would carry it and promote it. But if it's not going to be a national standard, let someone use it as a value-added representation.
What's who are the folks who are preventing this bill from moving forward? And the labeling bill, Linda Rosenthal, Laval bill, what's that? You know, who's preventing that from moving through?
Well, there's actually a pretty broad-based coalition of opponents, starting with the Farm Bureau. There are several companies that support farmers who are opposed, either people who assist with seeds or financing. Then there are food manufacturers, the Grocery Manufacturers Association.
Why are they more effective at stopping it than like GMO-free New York is not as successful pushing it through?
Well,
is it about the money?
No, I think, Mark, it's it's a lot harder to pass a bill than it is to stop it, because you only have to find one committee to stop it, and you've prevailed, whereas you have to get it through several hurdles to pass a bill. And I think there are a lot of legitimate issues and concerns. When we talk to people about we're not going to have the free flow of goods into New York, you're not going to have as many sale items, it's going to affect how we market fresh produce, people wanted to consider it. They weren't ready to go ahead.
So who are, in terms of the legislators, who are the friends of the Farm Bureau? We know who the friends of the people who are promoting GMO labeling, Linda Rosenthal and Ken LaValle and everyone who signed on to the bill. But you don't have another competing bill that has the names of all the other folks who say, no, we got to have a free market.
Well, I think it was a pretty controversial issue, and several members went to the speaker and spoke to leadership in the assembly and said, we don't think we want to move too fast on this bill.
Can there just be a resolution passed that says, yes, we want GMO labeling, but we need it on a national level, and just put it to bed, at least be on record as saying, let's have a resolution? And because the world of politics is compromise, and
sure,
a good compromise is when no one is happy.
Right. Actually, a few legislators mentioned that to me, and I think that's a good solution. As I said earlier, if we had a national bill either before Congress or a proposal before FDA, we'd be fine with that.
And have you surveyed the congressional delegation from New York and gotten their sense of whether they could do something with this?
We actually had a lobby day earlier where we talked about a couple of issues. That was one of them, and people are thinking about it.
What's your sense from?
I don't.
They just
I don't
looked at you,
understand.
smiled, and
I don't understand Congress. I barely understand Albany, and Congress just seems harder to get anything done there.
So why? So can't it be administratively through the Agriculture Department?
Probably through FDA.
FDA? Couldn't it administratively be done?
It certainly could be.
So have you met with the folks at FDA?
We have not, but that's something we've talked about with our national trade associations.
Which ones?
Food Marketing Institute and National Grocers Association.
I'm learning. This is good. I'm hoping our audience learns also.
Yeah, sure.
That's why I ask who, But, we have all these other products here, and they have all these other, like here's this cheese that has, rennet-free, Passover year-round, BST-free, it says a kosher symbol, Chalav Yisrael, and yet, you look at this and you say, well, maybe they'll put one more label on but who certifies that it's GMO-free?
There is an entity now that's doing it. But, frankly, we think it would be better if someone could go to a group like FDA, so there'd be a national review and a national database.
Yeah, but who is the group that's certifying GMO-free?
Well, a lot of it is just individual manufacturers' claim.
So we don't know if Goldbaum's potato chips is really GMO-free? Because it just says so without any symbol, it's just the lettering on here.
Organic, as I know, is very, very strict, and that's
correct.
legal.
That's correct.
People say it's like a book. I talked to a few farmers. Literally,
Right.
that's what they told me. The laws are as big as
Right.
a book. It's very, very difficult
Right.
to go through organic.
You would have truth in labeling laws apply, but actually someone would have to do a DNA test, or they'd have to go back to the source to see where they bought it.
So what types, are can potatoes be GMO, genetically modified?
The main products, I believe, I know corn, but I also think soybeans and some very limited other products.
Tomatoes?
There was a flavor saver tomato early on, but I think most tomatoes are not. But here's a question. So somebody developed a seedless watermelon,
Right.
which was a GMO product. They
Really?
don't exist in the natural world. We see seedless watermelons being sold in other alternate formats as an organic product. And we think, how is that possible? So somebody's buying those plants, growing it on an organic farm, and claiming it to be organic when it's really a genetically
Modified.
product.
That's a loophole
but-
in the organic business.
Well, someone is making claims and no one is policing the
Well,
marketplace.
maybe it's just it's a loophole, maybe that, I mean, I didn't read the book.
And,
on
and you know,
organic.
people.
Well, the point is that
Mm,
people are
right.
making all kinds of claims, and yeah, they did grow it on an organic farm, but where did it come from?
Well, that's the problem with some kosher products. And you know how Hebrew National got the slogan, "We answer to a higher authority"?
Right.
Do you know how that happened?
No, well, didn't they get in a fight with New York certifiers?
Well, they basically hired the certifier under their own. It wasn't an outside certifier, mashkiach. It was someone who they employed. So obviously, there's a conflict there because if you employ the certifier and he says this is not kosher, then you fire him and you find someone else. So that's why a third-party mashkiach, kosher agency, is most valid. So they said, well, we don't have to listen to the third-party people like the OU and all that. We have to answer to a higher authority. And they point up, and that's why when the commercial is, we answer to a higher authority, and they show the clouds,
Right.
and the thing, because they're saying, I'm not listening to you guys, we know we're doing it right, we know what we have to do, trust us.
Right.
And, that's why a lot of people will buy shofar and not, because they'll say.
The trouble is, it's just that for kosher products, and, Mark showed you a few of them, that especially the super kosher, the ultra-Orthodox, like the Chav Yisrael, the milk and dairy products, you pay more. So I pay more, and again, it's what we were saying before, because voluntary. I want to keep to a higher kosher. So if you want something more, just like anything in life, you want to get a basic brand car, you pay one, I want this on the car and that on the car and that on the car. Oh, fine, we'll give it to you, and you're paying double
more,
the
that's
par.
right.
I mean, that's just life. So, I think what we hit upon would be the best thing. If anybody wants to buy voluntary, you don't like GMO, this is a free country, fine. And just look for, you pay the extra, don't
Sure.
impose that on everybody else, because the price is, like you say, going to go higher. And I'm always worried, we have, there are people without food in the United States.
Sure.
It's difficult for some people to make means, and just to add on more added costs, it's difficult for any person, but there's surely their bottom rung on the economic scale.
Absolutely.
So what didn't we bring up that you'd like to add to this discussion about GMO labeling?
Well, just that, I think what the rabbi was saying is that there will be a real cost to consumers, and we're not sure a good solution is to impose higher cost every time a family goes shopping. If companies want to do it voluntarily, great, we'll offer it, and if people want to pay more, that's fine. We like it when people buy more expensive products. Or if you want to do it nationally so we don't impede the flow of goods into New York, we're fine with that as well.
And because like Price Choppers in Vermont and Massachusetts and other states.
I think they're in 6 states now.
Pennsylvania, yeah. So they would have a label just for New York, and then they would have
very difficult.
either that or they would pull out of the other states and only be New York centric.
Or we have to cut back what they offer. And Hannaford is based in Maine,
Right,
ShopRite is
sure.
based in New Jersey. They're all multi-state chains now.
So there are issues there in terms of the variety that we would have. you know.
Right, the variety and the pricing to the public.
Well, you have been a wealth of information. It's so good to have you on as our 100th guest.
I'm honored.
In Channel Albany. It's really terrific to have you as part of the series of the Jewish View, 100 episodes. Thank you, Rabbi Simon, also, because you've been a pleasure to work with. And, I love you as being the co-host, and and
You're
together
the
we work.
reporter, I'm the rabbi, and
That's
we
right.
make a good team.
Right.
We do. So another 120 shows maybe, okay?
120 years, we'll make it to another 1,000 shows. Well, thank you very much, and we always give a little blessing, Dad. You're sticking up for the man in the street, for consumer, and food is something essential, and everybody needs it, and they can't, people are hand to mouth. So, I deal with these kind of people that are, in need, and I appreciate looking out for the man in the street. So it's not too expensive, and you should continue, like we said, also to 120 years and see good success. Thank you.
Thanks
Well,
for being
thank you,
here,
Rabbi.
Mike. Thank you.